Welcome into the latest edition of the Sharps Report here on bettingpros.com. I'm your host, Matt Perrault. Each and every week, we talk to different market makers, professional sports gamblers, and people behind the counter to help you guys in your gambling days as we approach the NFL season. I got a chance to, I've been following this guy on Twitter for a long time, but second, I was at a Circa sports betting convention, and this guy I happened to be on the panel talking about sports betting, talking about the Circa $1,000,003, the Survivor contest, and the upcoming NFL season. He is Las Vegas Cris, and he is our guest here on this week for the Sharps Report. Cris, Matt Perrault, how are you?
Very good. Thanks for inviting me on.
Well, thank you for being a part of this, and you're a great guy to follow at LasVegasCris on Twitter. I recommend anyone going ahead and doing that. But for folks who might not know much about you, what's the quick bio? How did you get to where you're at?
Oh, well, I sold baseball cards and collectibles for over a decade and got chewed up and spit out in that industry and came out to play poker and start betting. I ran into my former partner, Frank, who taught me how to think a different way because I really wasn't a good gambler. This was about 2005, 2006. I really wasn't, I was ego driven. I thought I could win, but I was a square. And he taught me to, do the scalping and the middling and the buying back points to get free points when you're trying to do that. And it took a long time to retrain my brain. It sounds simple, but it's hard to think the opposite of what you've been doing for years. So formed a great partnership with him over the years. We were together for 10, 12 years, and he's doing his own thing right now. And I'm just me. I'm just betting away, playing contests, and sitting here.
Well, speaking of the contest, I think we have to at least have you talk about it. You've had a lot of success in the contest. Talk about where you have finished recently in some of these big pick contests.
Well, the original Circa, I finished 20th and 31st. And then last year I finished 2nd and 5th. So I've done pretty well with that. And I like to say I'm no contest superhero or anything. I've been very, very lucky and grateful to have done that well, and I've won some contests in the past. The win in 2011, the Eliminator, which is basically a Survivor, and the Palms, and Last Man Standing, and gone out the last day twice on Last Man Standing, and first and second in Golden Nugget regular season and playoffs every year, and never did win it though.
Was there a game last year in the Circa that, because I'm assuming we're talking 1 or 2 points. If my memory serves me correctly, I think the margin was 1 or 2 points for 1 or 2 games between you and first place. Was there half a game? Oh my. What was the game? What was the half a win?
Well, the problem is if you go to Christmas week, I did not turn in my card fast enough. I decided to turn in my card at the last minute, and they let me have the game so I could select the games. And as fast as I could punch it in, it went off the board. So I was right. I missed it by seconds. That would have given me an extra game. The following day, I decided to play that Arizona-San Francisco game at the last minute. It just dawned on me. Oh my God. So I run up the stairs and I punch it in. And just as I press send, because I'm thinking Arizona, I'm supposed to bet the other side. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I bet the wrong side. So, however it goes, I may be screwing up the teams, but right. So there's another game I lost or I flipped.
Yeah.
But but it doesn't matter because if I would have won, I have no sour grapes on it because if I had won, then it's a domino effect. It's like looking back at a roulette wheel to see, I would have won. No, you wouldn't have. It would have been different.
Right.
So, but Tennessee was the one game that my number one goal in the final week was to be different from everybody. And I played aggressively. I don't care about the money. It's trying to win. And I did a really good job, but the guy ahead of me matched 3 of mine. So it was very, very hard to overcome. And I had Tennessee, and they were winning big. And then Henry fumbles on his own 20-yard line. So
how it goes. And what's interesting, yeah, that happened to me with the reboot last year because we played the Pittsburgh Steelers game. We let it ride. And well, the game was played on Wednesday, not on Tuesday. So if it had actually come in, we wouldn't have won it, but we would have cashed if the Pittsburgh Steelers had played on Tuesday and not on Wednesday. So I can feel the pain about, look at it and go, it's 1 point, but yeah, it could have been done differently down the line. I want to talk about your in start right there because a lot of people are going to be in the Million in Super Contest and other things around in Vegas. As you approach this season, do you have any advice for people who are either veterans or people who are in it for the first time, how to approach the Circa Million or just a 5-game pick contest?
Well, for the most important thing is you play with money you don't care about because, and you don't just play to get in the money. It's just like poker. If you're going to play to get in the money, you're going to get chipped out. You're going to do something wrong. You're going to sabotage yourself. So you have to play with money that you can easily afford. You can't be thinking in the back of your head, I need to cash. I put $1,000 into this or whatever it is. First and foremost, if you're playing Survivor, it's a really simple rule to remember. You want big favorites and you don't play them. It's that simple. You can't win. You cannot win if you're playing the same games other people are playing. It's the easiest game in the world. But every single week, you're going to see everybody top loaded on the big favorites. It's ridiculous. So you have to spend money that you can easily afford, and you can't be afraid to go out week 1, week 2, week 3, whatever. In fact, that's better. I mean, take your risks early on.
Week 1 is interesting because when it comes to Survivor, do you get involved with teams that are, because we see preseason, but we haven't seen the games, and a lot of teams aren't playing their starters in preseason. Is week 1 one of the more difficult weeks when it comes to Survivor for you?
Well, I didn't play Survivor last year, and it was funny too because so many people contacted me, and I was able to help them along the way. I mean, the guy that won the FanDuel or came in second, at least 4 people that cashed in Circa. And at least like 3 or 4 others that didn't listen to me that went out. So when you're not involved, it's really easy. And I had to have the same conversation with people and say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to make this tough decision. You have to take this. I mean, I can't do it. I can't do it. So
when you say big spreads, do you mean double digit or do you mean 7 and higher? Or what's your definition?
Here's an example. The week before the Jets beat the Rams, I went out on Twitter and I said, don't play Seattle. You can't play Seattle. This is a gift. You want everybody to be there. The equity that you get, if all those people go out, is humongous. Do the math. Just take any other team. It doesn't matter. You're much better off taking a 4-point favorite and risking it. And it didn't happen against Seattle, but it happened the very next week.
Yeah. And then you had, a bunch of teams got cleaned out and just fading. I've seen people who are in Survivor pools decide to map out the entire season beforehand. Now, they don't follow it religiously, but they have an idea going into the week what they're going to look at. Do you recommend that to go that far out, or is it better to go week by week because of injuries and how the narrative will change and how teams will look week by week?
Well, you have to preserve his Christmas and Thanksgiving weeks. Other than that, you don't chase the Super Bowl, the Tampa Bay thing. That's ridiculous. But you have to try to save the 6 teams for Christmas and Thanksgiving, unless it's painfully obvious that somehow it's going to be a big dog that you can somehow use early. So, but you have to save those favorites.
So save all 6 teams for Thanksgiving
if you can.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah, interesting.
But I think mapping it all out I thought that was a good idea, and I was intimidated. I didn't want to deal with these guys with their algorithms. I mean, you're going to have dozens and dozens of people. It's very easy to just map it in and find out what your best pathway is. And if you're going to play against 100 or 200 people that are doing that, I'm like, it takes the spirit out of it. That's why I didn't want to get into it last year. But I realized that well, it's useless. It really is. It's a waste of time to map out your whole season other than those 2 weeks, because everything changes. Injuries, there's just too many variables.
Do you think, is there anything to the fact that there's going to be an overlay for the Survivor? Do you care about that other than the fact there are less teams in it? Does the positive EV attract you more than going into the million where there's not going to be an overlay? I know they're different contests, but does that positive EV matter to you when it comes to which contest you play?
Well, it's not an either or for me, but if they're not at 5,000, then I might get more. I'll probably get 1 entry, maybe 2. But if it's below 5,000, then I might get more.
Well, they need 6,000 to hit the overlay, and they may not get to 5. You're right. They may be $1 million short from what they're going to be on Survivor. I think million's going to be fine. They'll get over the 4,000 needed, probably at 4,500, somewhere in that range for the entries. But I don't think Survivor is going to be, we have until Saturday afternoon here in Vegas to get signed up for both the Survivor and the Circa Million 3. But it looks like there's going to be a pretty big overlay for the Survivor.
I think they need to lower the number of entries, because I think the 6 is intimidating to people, because if you're Joe Blow and $1,000 is important money, where are you going to put it?
Right.
I mean, one winner against everybody that might potentially have 6 entries, or, millions or super contests where you have all these, quarterly prizes and booby prizes and paying 50 spots. So that's what's hurting it.
I totally agree. And I've asked that of Derek Stevens, and I've asked that of others at Circuit, saying, if you do it over again, would you have flipped it and gone 6 million to the Circuit 3 and gone with 4 million for the Survivor?
5 and 5 would have been good.
Or go 5 and 5 and have that and have more money being available, in the Circa Million, because people, I think you're right. People will go in there, and if it's $1,000, and for most people, that's a lot of money, they're going to go, well, if I'm going to go ahead and lay this down, I want to be alive for 18 weeks. I don't want to do this for 1 week and then poof, it's gone, which is, I think, scary to a lot of people who come in, who maybe fly into Vegas and hire a proxy and whatnot to go ahead. There's a lot of expense to that for only one bad week where a team gets upset and all of a sudden you're out. So, yeah, I think that's partial to it. In terms of preparation for the $1.3 million, when you're coming through, you made a great comment about wanting to be contrarian and wanting to go against the public. Do you wait to see and kind of get a feel for where everyone's going to be before you put your picks in? Like, how late do you wait to put your picks in?
I'm not necessarily trying to go against the public. I'm oftentimes trying to avoid the common games potentially. Right. It really depends. I mean, if you're coming from behind, you have to do that. If you're in the lead, well, now you're going to kind of gravitate toward that. So, but no, I'm not playing line moves. I think that's one of the bad things that people do is, that hook's there, I'm not going to play that, or I'm getting an extra half a point because the line moved up to 7.5. I only have to lay 7. I think it's a big mistake. Ignore the half points. If you like a game, just take it.
Interesting. Is that also just for straight betting or just contest betting?
I'm referencing the contest, but certainly for NCAA, I mean, you just have to ignore it. I mean, you're not buying points or anything like that. You got to do what you got to do. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have to suck it up. I mean, it really depends on how strong your numbers are, quite frankly.
Right. The Circa $1.3 million, one thing that's been, I think it's interesting when people look at the consensus 5. You mentioned if you're in the lead, it really is a game. And I think people kind of forget about that a little bit, that there is a difference between contest betting and betting straight. So for you, line movement, in terms of where the number shifts, you don't really care about any of that stuff when it comes to contest betting. So the stagnant lines don't really matter much to you.
Oh, no, I care, but I usually look at them and say, okay, well, now we're going to get a bunch of people on that game and let's hope it goes down. But if it's a really strong game and I'm on it, I'm on them and I'm off them. It just depends week to week. There's all these contest strategies and rules and all that stuff. It doesn't happen every week. Sometimes a certain strategy may not happen for a whole year, or may only happen once. So it's not that it's not like you have to keep track of, I got to remember this and I got to remember that. No, it's just, just be aware that you might want to do this week or that week.
Yeah, one more thing on the $1.3 million, and I've talked to a former winner of the Westgate Super Contest about this because he had 2 entries and he cashed both. He won one and came in 5th place with the other. Yourself came in the top 5, 2nd, and 5th in the circuit contest last year. Does having 2 teams change your strategy at all? Do you play one team differently than the other? Do you play the same games, different games? Do you fade one or the other? How does having 2 entries factor into the way you approach the contest?
Well, that reminds me, you never sacrifice an entry in Survivor, by the way. So okay. Just remember that. You never do it. Never. No, I would never play. I don't think I would ever play the opposite side in Millions, but I play them differently. I play them independently. I did a look back, and I actually average having to have 6.7 plays per week. So I rarely match all 5. And I believe more than 50% are 0, 1, or 2 that I match. Something like that. So I'm playing them differently. But last year, one of my entries just won every week, 3 and 2, 3 and 2, 4 and 1, 3 and 2, until week 12. The other one started off 1 and 4, and it was up and down, and I was down in the 2,800s. I actually thought about going for the booby prize, so I had to just throw everything out of the window and do that one completely different. So,
and which one wound up coming in second?
The one that came in second was the Steady Eddie. But boy, I think they were only a half a game or a game apart going into the final week.
Wow.
I think I went 10-0 the last 2 weeks on the one that came in 5th. So I got very lucky. You have to be lucky. You have to be lucky. I can't tell you how lucky you have to be.
Well, it's interesting because 3 and 2, avoiding the 0 and 5s and avoiding the 1 and 4s. I've always been told that look, if you can go the whole year 2 and 3, if that's your worst score, you're gonna be pretty in good shape. You're gonna wind up getting yourself at least somewhere in the money. But you just said that you can go 1 and 4 and you can recover if you get really, really hot. So yeah, either or.
Yeah. I think I had 2 1 and 4s on that one too, if I'm not mistaken. So, wow. But I've never had an 0 and 5, thankfully.
And then knock on wood that we're not, for this coming year. All right, so let me ask you a little bit about something you said on a panel that I was at for the Circa Million, and I found it really interesting. You talked about totals, and you said that you do not play totals, and I have had I'll look at a game sometimes and I'll say, I'm leaning towards this side, but I think I like this side, so I'm going to go with a low scoring game, so I'll play the under. Or I'm going for a high scoring game, I like this side, but I like the over more. So I basically, since you've said that, I've played 1 total and I went, And so I've started college football now. I've played 1 total. I am 0 and 1, and I've gone 12, 2 and 1 on the other betting sides. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that as to why you don't like playing totals?
Because I think unless you have a metric-based model and you've got like what I have for sides, are you kidding me? I mean, give me a break. It's like flipping a coin, in my opinion. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, but I know that much that I have to have something. If I'm going to have positive EV, it isn't going to come from my thinking because I'm an idiot like everybody is. You have to have some sort of metric base, some sort of foundation to kind of steer you somewhere. Geez, there's crazy stuff that happens in those games.
Is it more predictable for you to look at the way a team's going to play versus like what happened in the Florida State and Notre Dame game where it was a pretty low scoring game and then all of a sudden it became just a ridiculous 80-point game? Is it more predictable that when it comes to which side you want to be on?
Well, when you're comparing sides and totals, what do the teams care about? They don't care about how many points are scored, but they care about whether they're going to win or lose. So there's your big advantage with just sticking to the sides. Now there's a lot of great totals players, and they've got the system down pat, and they win every year, and God bless them. Leave me the formula in your will.
It's interesting because I'd never heard anybody say that like, I don't touch, like, I think you said you played like 40 totals in the last year. And I was like, wow, that's something that I hadn't really thought of. And then I went home and went back and started, I keep track of every bet I make and looked at it, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I think I'm kind of like, I don't think I'm underwater betting totals, but I'm not anywhere near where I am betting sides. And it kind of like uncovered a little bit of my own weakness to go, huh. And that line you just said about what do teams care about, it happened just on Monday night, obviously, or on Sunday night rather, because, Florida State's down 18 points going into the late third quarter, and they throw everything out and they put in a backup quarterback, and all of a sudden they're scoring tons of points. And if you were on the under, you were toast. And the under in that play was a really popular bet. A lot of people were on the under in the first half and under in the game, and both lost because Florida State puts in a backup quarterback and all of a sudden points just start scoring. And I immediately thought of you. And I was like, that's why Cris said that, because this makes perfect sense. Florida State covers. I was on Florida State +7, but I would have added to the under. I would have said, let's take Florida State in the under and be done with it. And I left that bet away, and I didn't bet the under. I bet Florida State +7, and there you go. It was a 1-0 day, and it was a cash, and it was a profitable game for me. So it is remarkable that, a one sentence someone can say to you, and all of a sudden it kind of changes the way you're approaching your own gambling.
But that's so important. Two things. Number one, think of the opportunity cost of effort. If you're not doing something, everybody has to be honest with themselves. And that's the hardest person to be honest with in your life, is yourself. You have to pick things that are dead weight, that you don't get any payback on, because you can apply that time to something else. I mean, if you've been trying your hardest at totals and you're break even, what's the point? If you know you're doing better in sides, maybe you'll do even better in sides.
Yeah,
I lost number 2 though.
No, but I think it's really true. I mean, I think one of the things for, the people who listen to my podcast, The Daily Juice, and listen to that, a lot of times they're newbies and they're coming in and they're asking very basic questions. They're asking very basic. And oftentimes I'm talking to them about, how much time are you spending, doing research? Are you just following what people are telling you to bet, or are you doing your own homework? And developing that, I think, for a lot of people is tough, because they just want to be told what to bet. They just tell me what to play. I'm really, really busy. And like, I often say to people, like, you got to be careful on that, because you can't get angry with someone who gets a pick wrong if you're not going to do the homework yourself. Yeah.
I got 2 things again. The light bulb that went off in your head. I listen to so much stuff. I listen to the mainstream nerdy guys that give you all the analytics, and I listen to the Weekend Warrior type podcasts, and I read from everything. And just like your light bulb, you never know where you're going to get one little tidbit that you benefit from it, and it'll just dawn on you. And I know it sounds like BS, but I can't tell you how many Sundays or Saturdays where it just comes to me. The information, all of a sudden, it just comes, and you just realize you have an epiphany. Oh my God, I got to be on this team. Seriously, it's like somebody hit you. But that, that's not prefaced with what I think is most important is, don't pick your sides on Mondays and Tuesdays. Don't even try to pick your sides. Just absorb information. Don't pick sides until you have to pick sides, especially in contests. But you know what? With all this COVID stuff, trust me, this could be just as bad as last year. And I went to put in games at least a half a dozen times, and I'm like, no, you can't do it. It's like, this could happen, that could happen. We don't know. We don't know. And for me, 2 games, I'm betting 130 NFL games a year. 2 games makes a difference. Changes me from 60% to 58%. So I work as hard as I can all summer long. I listen to all these stupid podcasts. I read this and I read that, and I scroll Twitter endlessly. I dream with the Twitter timeline going through. And I'm just trying to save a loss here, a loss there, try to get a win here, a win there. All that effort is to change 1 or 2 games for the entire season because I can't control the rest of it.
That's so interesting because I've seen this before where basically we're talking 4 to 5 games will separate the professional from the public square, if you want to call it them, whatever you want to call it, average player. So you really, you subscribe to that. Like we're talking about 4 to 5 plays will make or break a year for you.
It's not even that many. I mean, it's less than that. I mean, it's, it's important, one game means a lot. And you have to treat it that way. And let me tell you, we've all done it where you're in a hurry and you're just, I'm going to throw in that team. If it's a contest, I'm just going to do that. Mm-hmm. I'm done. I can't, I'm sick of trying to figure it out. You get careless. You just do it. I'm just going to throw the 5th team into this 5-team round robin that you didn't need. We all have done it. You can't do it. You can't do it.
How do you approach losing? Because obviously we all do it. And I'm pretty honest with my audience. I lose a lot. But how do you handle it? Is there a trick? Do you meditate? Do you go for walks? Like how do you handle that inevitable stretch where you're just not seeing the board?
I think it's the opening up a can of worms. I think mental health and mental awareness is probably just as important as having winners, if not more important. Because even if you have the winners, if you don't have mental balance, you're going to screw up betting those winners anyway, and you're going to throw in some losers. So, but knowing yourself and knowing triggers and knowing what you can deal with and what you can't deal with is very important. And it's not weakness, it's strength. If you see vulnerability in yourself, that's strength. It's not weakness that you recognize it. So there had to have been at least 4 Sundays where I didn't like how the 1 o'clocks were going. There was one Sunday I never even saw what the 1 o'clocks finished. Didn't even wait for the 1 o'clocks. Didn't find out till Monday morning. There were at least 2 more. I knew the 1 o'clocks and didn't even watch any of the 4 o'clocks or the Sunday and didn't know till Monday. And then another one where I started the 4 o'clocks and I'm like, forget it. I oftentimes just check out. I go, listen, I can't deal with a bad night's sleep. I can't deal with this. I really just need to chill out. I'll find out in the morning. And I just avoid social, Twitter. I shut off the phone. And, half the time it was good, half the time it was bad. But you just have to know how you're going to respond. If you know you can't handle bad news, or then you avoid it.
Yeah, I do it. I mean, one thing that I've learned, and this kind of becomes, I remember when I first heard a guy who I'm sure Bill Krakenberger, make the comment that he doesn't watch games as much anymore because he just bets on them. And once the bet's in, it's out of his control up to the point where he places the wager. That's his control. And then once he places a bet, it's often, it doesn't matter what happens on the screen. Just, get away from it and find out whether you win or lose. And I kind of was like, man, how could you do that? And now I am, I think I'm 430 consecutive days of betting now. And I do watch football because I love football, so I enjoy it. But like when I'm betting baseball, if I'm betting multiple games, betting baseball, I don't always watch the games. I'll check in with it. I'll go do something else. I'll come back. I mean, the phone is so up to date that I can just watch a game and watch the numbers come up on a phone. But I don't spend a ton of time when I'm really busy. If I'm betting a bunch of baseball games, watching baseball, spending 4 hours, 7 hours, 12 hours, whatever, just stuck watching baseball. I don't find that fun, to be quite honest. I do watch football, but do you watch games you play? Do you care about sweating games, or is it just I'm making the wager and then it's done, whether it hits or not? I'll just wait and see what happens.
It's funny because they're playing reruns on Red Zone from last year. And boy, does it trigger when they change it. Even the reruns trigger me. It's like, what's going on? And there are days when I can take it in stride, and then there are days when I'm like seriously cringing. I'm like, ugh. But my belief is if you're betting something and you know what you're doing, you expect it to happen. I don't need validation. I don't need to see it. I don't need to be validated. So the only alternative is to watch how I got screwed by the refs, stupid plays, fumbles, things, out of my control. So, I mean, you have to remember the very moment you place that bet, you never had any control from the moment you place the bet. You're completely powerless the entire time. What you have power over is how you want to deal with it. And you can't sit there and lose more than once and just dread it the whole time.
Right.
It's going to be what it's going to be.
Right. The college football playoffs are overtime rule. I just found this out yesterday when I was watching the Notre Dame. We're taping this on Monday. When I was watching the Notre Dame game, and the fact that they're now going to go after the second overtime. The second overtime, you have to go for 2. And then the third overtime, it's just 2-point conversions for 2 points. Now, I don't know how I waited this long to find this out, but I'm curious, does that bother you, concern you when it comes to totals, when it comes to sides? I mean, they're going to score touchdowns and going to be awarded 2 points for it and not being awarded 6 points for it anymore.
Well, it's better than penalty kicks.
It's right along. It's up there, Sale Alley, though. I mean, it's their version of shootouts.
I really enjoyed soccer this summer, and boy, those penalty kicks you can't get worse than that. So,
yeah,
I don't like the idea where you automatically put somebody in field goal range. That seems idiotic to me. But I don't. You know what? I don't. It's no different than putting them on the 25. You might as well speed it up.
Yeah. It's to me, it's artificially creating offense. It's just like baseball putting a runner at second base. It drives me crazy because you're just betting unders in baseball with the new baseball rules. I just stopped doing it just because of you go to extra innings and all of a sudden it's just you're dead because 4 runs get scored in the extra innings because you have a runner on second base and the reliever comes in and can't handle it. Manufacturing offense is outside the purview of the game, and that bugs me. And putting the ball on the 3-yard line and saying, okay, let's play for 2 points, one play, you guys all go to see who wins, given the magnitude of what one win does in college football, seems to be nuts to me. I was sitting there yesterday going, okay, that's crazy. Like, I can't believe we're actually going to be doing this. It has to go to 3 overtime, so it's not going to be all that likely, but there will be games this year that head down that path. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, what's about to happen? We're going for 2 each time.
Well, I don't like the NFL overtime because, now they let you match.
Right.
But then if the original team scores, then it's over.
Yeah. Touchdown.
That's idiotic. I mean, you've got to continue to allow people to match.
Yep. Yeah. The fact that both teams do not get a possession is something that has to be addressed at some point. And you have to allow, even touchdown or no touchdown, you have to allow both teams to have a chance to score a touchdown.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Touchdown and it's over, right?
Yep. Yeah, and then 3 points. A field goal, both teams get it on a field goal, but if you have a touchdown, then the game's over. And it's just like, awful. Okay. It's like, come on. And it's tough because you can't wager on with the idea the game's going to overtime. But sometimes, you are looking at that going, it's going to be a tight game. It could potentially go to overtime, and you have to kind of, be kind of factoring it in. How do you feel about teasers? Do you like them in the NFL?
Oh, there's a time and a place for it. I like to be creative about teasers sometimes. And if I get stuck on a game, I call them savers. Let's say, I've got a bad number and it's moved 2 points against me and I want to get off. Well, then I'm going to put the other side in. And then I'm going to throw that into a game that I plan on playing anyway. So that's one way to get off, and you can win both, but
right,
it can make things worse. But you got to. It's still better than just buying off and taking a loss or giving yourself a Polish middle. I don't like to do a lot of teasers. I mean, they don't come into play enough technically.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
But there's a time and a place for them, and also. I like to throw them into other things sometimes. So if I really do like a team, but I'm not going to straight bet them. Okay, I'm going to put the first leg in. So let's just say I like Tampa Bay. So I put the first leg on Tampa Bay, and then the second leg's going to be on a team I was going to bet anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm rooting for.
What do you feel? How do you feel about the prices that have been progressively going up and up and up, and now basically minus 120 is the prevailing price to bet a teaser? Is that fair?
Well, I was talking about it with Matt Metcalf from Circa. He seems to think that you can still beat the house at minus 120. I think it's kind of questionable, but you definitely cannot lay more than 120 on an NFL teaser. I mean, these places are charging 140, 150, it's 130. It's ridiculous. And you can't lay more than even money on an NCAA teaser, and you shouldn't be playing an NCAA teaser anyway. But if you have to, there are very, very rare cases where if the total's really low, I mean, you're talking about 41 or under, and you're going through the key numbers and you're getting even money juice, maybe. The rest of it, no, you don't play teasers in college. You don't buy points in college. There's no point worth buying in college.
Completely agree.
And I noticed Pinnacle was selling the Tampa Bay 7 for 15 cents. So what does that tell you about spending a quarter to buy the 7, which almost every place charges? If Pinnacle's willing to sell you the 7 for 15 cents total, not an extra 15 cents, why would you pay a quarter? The 7's not worth buying either.
Buying up to 7 or buying under center? Under 7.
Just buying, either direction off of it. If you're laying 7.5, you don't spend the extra 10 cents.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I know I like teasing the NFL. I don't like teasing, but I'm learning more about expected value and learning more about what the price of a point really is. If somebody wants to learn more about, like you mentioned, buying picks at what number, what's a way of starting out to kind of uncover that and to learn more about what the value of the point actually means?
Are you talking about on teasers or just regular bets?
Just either or. I mean, just in terms of finding the value of why you shouldn't be buying off of a number, why not buy under 7.5 or under 6.5, rather 6.5 to 7 or 7.5 to 7. Where do you find the value? Like, people often ask me, and I have a tough time. I kind of direct them to The Logic of Sports Betting and Matthew Davidow and Ed Miller's book and say, read that book. It'll help you. But how do you recommend someone who comes to you and says, what's a way of kind of uncovering the value of what a number actually means?
Well, you can, Unabated has, it's a free service right now, and they've got a very nice model. You can just punch them in. And that's one way to do it. But the rule's really easy. You don't buy points in NCAA, and you're probably not buying points in the NFL because they're going to charge you too much.
Yeah.
So, it's one thing if they're going to only charge you a dime in a particular instance, in certain cases. I mean, if you have a place that's 6.5, minus 6.5, and you like the dog, and you see the board's already at 6 and even maybe leaning 5.5, well, now that's worth a little bit more equity. So, or if for sure a line's going to move a certain direction and you're going to get, extra equity from having that. Those are small considerations that come into play sometimes, but you're generally not buying points. And I'm a hypocrite because sometimes I do. I mean, it's a mental wellness issue. But the math says you don't do it. I mean, you just traditionally don't. It's so complicated, the scenarios, that I just can't recommend it.
Do you, and we'll wrap here in a couple seconds. How do you handle when you mentioned, like, if you're on 6.5 or the number, if a better number was once available, then when you miss the best number, do you recommend the discipline to walk away from it, or do you recommend the discipline of saying, okay, maybe you can buy a half a point to come up to the number that you like? Is there ever a case where you could see someone buying from, say, 5.5 to 6 or 6.5 to 7?
Well, I do that sometimes for mental wellness, where I want that original number, but I've changed. Now, I used to be the type of guy that I had to have the best number. I mean, I was out there on Sundays with opening lines, and I'd have, seriously, I have over 35 games bet by Monday at noon.
Wow.
And I had to have the best of the number. I just couldn't get away from it. With COVID and with excess injuries lately, I don't even look. I don't even pretty much. I try to ignore the opening lines and the look ahead lines because I don't need that added mental torture of, well, I could have had a 7 and it's 5.5.
Yeah.
I don't need it. So I can't get it. So why do I torture myself with it? But why do I don't want to buy games on Mondays. I don't think. I mean, it's going to be a case by case basis, going to have to go by feel. But realistically, we're all better off waiting as long as we can, because I guarantee you there's going to be COVID issues in NCAA and NFL that are going to hurt, and they're going to hurt bad at some point. So
quarterbacks and offensive linemen and defensive ends and wide receivers. I'm totally with you. That's why I think you have to wait now until Saturday, Sunday morning. You have to wait until to find out what these teams are going to look like, because I do think you're going to get burned, because I don't think these teams are going to be forthcoming, and I think they're going to hide a lot until they have to be open with it and say, okay, fine, we're starting our backup quarterback because our starters got COVID, or he's unvaccinated in the 5 day. Not that you have COVID, but if you're unvaccinated and you got that 5 day, you came in close contact with somebody who is positive, that rule I think is almost more difficult to deal with than a player contracting COVID, because that player may be negative, but he's out for 5 days because he's not vaccinated, and you won't know that until that player is forced to be out. So it's that wrinkle as a whole, I think could be very, very complicated for us as we try to approach this.
And you can just bet a portion. You don't have to bet your whole amount. I mean, you can, dip your toe in the water and just be cautious is all I can say. It's going to happen.
Okay, so circle it back to the Circa $1,000,000. You've got a cool new thing that's going to be dropping this week for the Circa $1,000,000. Tell the folks about how can they watch it, how can they follow along what you're going to be doing this season for the Circa $1,000,003, because I will be definitely watching and paying attention to this.
It's actually for all contests. It's for a super I think Covers is going to announce Wednesday. We're going to have a show starting every Thursday at 10 o'clock Pacific time, just after Circa releases their numbers. And Adam Chernoff, which most people should be familiar with, and I are going to have a live show. We're going to discuss the point spread or the contest numbers at Super Contest, Millions, maybe FanDuel, and we'll touch on Survivor. But what our goal is going to be is to really try to see how we can do picking what the people are going to pick. What do we think the hot games are going to be? Kind of, just kind of touch base on the, comment on the lines, and just see whether we can get a pulse on what the people will be on the weekend. But it's going to be tough on Thursday because a lot of stuff can happen. But
true.
At least we'll bring the contests to light a little bit more and have a little bit of discussion. We'll see where it goes.
That's awesome, because I think I used to do a podcast with Vegas Matty, who runs a really successful proxy service here in town called Fade or Follow, and we would try to talk about the consensus as to where the public or the most bets were going to come in. It was on the Super Contest. Circa hadn't existed when we were doing it, but that's often really fun. I think it's going to be interesting to hear where you guys think, because sometimes you can automatically point out and say, oh yeah, everyone's going to be on this number, for whether it be a key number or whether it just be a game or a team's undefeated or they love Brady in prime time or whatever the narrative is going to be around it. So I will be very excited to watch. That will be on covers.com, or is that going to be on Covers' social media? Do you know yet?
I believe if they've got a YouTube channel, it's going to go through whatever they're currently doing with video content, as far as I understand.
YouTube. Okay. Very cool. So we'll check out the Covers YouTube channel for that. I will be very much interested in watching you guys. You and I are going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about these lines, because it will help us kind of uncover some of the secrets here of these picks contests, because it is a game. And I think your first point, and we're going to end it with that, was so accurate and so good, that you have to be willing to lose this and go into it knowing that you're not going to be sweating it out the money. It has to be looked at as a game. And I've told people, look, split it in half, split it in a third, get two of your buddies together, $300 each or whatever it is. And you guys won't be as committed and feeling like you have to go after this yourself. And it's a one way of kind of having a really fun, split it up, even $1,000 over 20 weeks, you break it down. And that's not a lot of money. It's $55 or whatever it is every week that you're betting. You're going to bet more than that anyway. So why not be involved in a contest where you could really, first place prize is pretty darn nice, and top 50 is pretty darn nice as well. As they've listened to us at least about not paying out top 10, paying out more than that now. So we all have a chance to benefit.
There's very few feelings that are better than when you're on a team that and everybody else and 80% of whoever's left went out on a game that you're not on. Boy, is that one of the greatest highs you can imagine. So if you're looking for like some real great emotion that's better than that Hail Mary, or Hail Murray, if you were on Arizona that game, that's where you get it. That's where you're going to get the big high, because you can't get that big high if you're on with everybody else.
So true. He is Las Vegas Cris. Follow him on Twitter at LasVegasCris. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time today. Really appreciate you coming on and being with us today.
My pleasure. I had a good time.